My son Michael texted me, "We just want a quiet Christmas with the family. Don't come." I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back, "Have fun." Before we go any further, if my story has found you, hit subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to see just how far my words can travel. They had no clue that I was sitting on a hidden fortune of $8 million. Later, when some of my friends posted pictures on social media, my phone lit up with 53 calls in a row. I told them, "I'm glad you're here. Stick around for the whole story and let me know what city you're watching from. I want to see just how far my story reaches." That morning, I was at my kitchen table sipping coffee and watching snow drift down outside when my phone buzzed. A message from Michael. My heart gave that same little flutter it always did whenever I heard from him, even now at 65 after years of letdowns. I read his words again. "We just want a quiet Christmas with the family. Don't come." I went over it 3 times before it truly sank in. Don't come. To Christmas. The one I'd been planning for months. I'd bought gifts, tried new recipes, imagined my grandkids' faces lighting up when they tore into their presents. My hands started shaking. Not the faint tremor that comes with age, but the hard, sudden kind that hits when your whole world shifts. I set the phone down on the worn wooden table and stared until the words blurred. 28 Christmas mornings. 28 years of waking up at 5 a.m. to get the turkey started, setting the table with my grandmother's china, making sure everything felt perfect for my family. And this is how it ends, with a text. My fingers moved stiffly as I typed 2 words. Have fun. It was all I could manage without breaking apart completely. The quiet in my tiny apartment pressed in around me. I glanced at the decorations I'd put up 3 weeks earlier. The small tree in the corner, covered in ornaments my grandkids had made over the years. The stockings on my little makeshift mantle, each carefully stitched with a name. Even Michael's wife Lauren had one, though she'd never thanked me for a thing. I remembered last Christmas. The way Lauren rolled her eyes when I brought out the photo albums, how she whispered to Michael about me living in the past when I tried to share childhood stories. My own grandchildren, Chloe and Ryan, barely looked up from their phones. But I kept trying. Always trying. The worst part wasn't being left out. It was the way they did it, so casually. "We just want a quiet Christmas." As if I were some disruption. As if 40 years of single motherhood, of working 2 jobs after their father died, of giving up every dream I'd ever had, meant nothing. I went to my bedroom, opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a wooden box from under my sweaters. Inside were letters. Michael's notes from college thanking me for care packages, for sending money when he was broke, for always believing in him. A letter from when Chloe was born, telling me what an amazing grandmother I would be. When did I stop being a blessing and start being a burden? I think it began when Michael married Lauren. She came from real wealth, and suddenly my little apartment was too small, my handmade gifts too cheap, my stories about Michael's childhood too embarrassing. I became the poor relative they endured out of obligation. But I endured too because I loved them. Because family was supposed to stick together. Then the phone rang, snapping me out of my thoughts. For just a moment, hope stirred in my chest. Maybe Michael had realized how cold his text had been. Maybe he was calling to apologize. But when I picked up, it was my neighbor Susan. "Honey, I hope I'm not interrupting, but Robert and I were wondering if you'd like to join us for Christmas dinner tomorrow. The weather's supposed to be lovely and we'd really love to have you." Susan and Robert lived in the penthouse of our building. I'd helped her once when she locked herself out, and over the past year, we'd grown friendly. They moved in wealthy circles, but never once made me feel like I didn't belong because I lived in a modest 1-bedroom. "Oh, I don't want to impose," I said automatically, though deep down I was already saying yes. "Nonsense," she replied. "We're having it catered by the French Laundry, and honestly we could use your warmth there. Some of Robert's business friends can be a little stiff." The French Laundry. I'd read about it in magazines, the kind of place I never imagined eating at. "What should I bring?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just yourself, dear. Cocktails at 6, dinner at 8. And dress up, it's a formal affair." After we hung up, I stood in front of the hallway mirror. 65 years old, with hair I colored myself and clothes bought from department store sales. What was I thinking, accepting a dinner invitation from millionaires? But then Michael's text flashed in my mind. That casual dismissal, the assumption I'd just quietly fade out of their lives whenever it suited them. Maybe it was time to stop shrinking myself for people who didn't value what I brought to the table. I went to my closet and pulled out the black dress I'd bought for Michael's wedding but never worn again. It still fit, mostly. I'd pair it with my mother's pearl necklace, the one thing I owned that could pass for expensive. As I hung the dress on the closet door, my phone buzzed. A text from Lauren. Thanks for understanding. The kids are so excited for a quiet Christmas with just us. I deleted it without replying. Tomorrow, while they enjoyed their peaceful Christmas, I'd be dining with people who actually wanted me there. For the first time in hours, I smiled. The next morning, I woke with a strange clarity. Maybe it was the finality of Michael's rejection, or maybe it was knowing I'd be somewhere I was welcome. Something inside me had shifted overnight. I made my coffee and sat at my kitchen table, opening my laptop for the first time in months. I logged into my investment account, the one Michael didn't know existed. There it was, $8,247,332. The same number I'd seen for 3 years, ever since Aunt Margaret died. My father's sister, who never married, made her fortune in tech stocks back in the 70s and left everything to me. In her letter she wrote, "You're the only one in this family who truly understands the value of hard work." I'd kept it a secret, wanting Michael to build his own life, to learn the worth of a dollar like I had. I thought if he knew I had money, he'd never see me as anything but a bank account. But I'd been wrong, he didn't respect me anyway. The irony hit hard. All those years of him asking for 50 here, 200 there. That time he wanted 5,000 for Chloe's school tuition, promising to repay me and then never mentioning it again. The way he sighed when I couldn't take the kids to Disney World, or when I brought homemade gifts to birthdays instead of the pricey toys their other grandmother, Diane, always showed up with. Diane, who never let anyone forget she bought Chloe's first car, paid for Ryan's summer camp, and funded their Europe vacation. Diane, who got the seat of honor at every family gathering while I was stuck in the kitchen. I told myself it was the right thing. Stay humble, don't spoil them, teach them values. But what values had they learned? That it was fine to treat me like a second-class relative. That my love and sacrifices meant nothing compared to Diane's checkbook. I shut the laptop and went to my closet. Behind my winter coats was a garment bag I hadn't touched in years. Inside was a red silk designer dress I'd bought on impulse 5 years earlier, saving it for a special occasion that never came until now. I slipped it on. It fit better than I remembered, the color warming my brown eyes and making my gray hair look dignified instead of tired. I looked like someone with secrets, someone worth knowing. The afternoon moved slowly. I styled my hair, painted my nails, and applied makeup with a level of care I hadn't given myself in years. At 5:30, I fastened my mother's pearls around my neck and studied my reflection in the full-length mirror. I looked like money. Old money. The kind of woman who belonged in penthouses and private clubs. Which I realized I actually was. At exactly 6, I knocked on Susan and Robert's door. Robert, elegant in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, answered. His eyes widened slightly. "And you look absolutely stunning," he said, taking my hand and leading me inside. Their penthouse was everything my apartment wasn't. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Golden Gate Park, glittering chandeliers. Artwork I suspected was original. I recognized some of the faces from the society pages, though I'd never imagined I'd be sharing a room with them. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet our dear friend Anne," Susan announced, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of champagne. "She's the wonderful neighbor I've been telling you about." The evening played out like something from a film. I found myself in an animated conversation with Victoria Bennett about her work with literacy programs. I discussed art with a museum curator and even held my own in a spirited debate on economic policy with a former hedge fund manager. It wasn't just that they treated me like an equal, I actually felt like one. For the first time in years, I wasn't defining myself by what I couldn't buy or what I couldn't provide. I was simply a woman with her own thoughts, opinions, and life experiences worth sharing. Over dinner, Victoria leaned toward me and said, "You know, we're always looking for new board members for the foundation. You have such valuable insight into what really matters for working families." I almost laughed at the idea, until I saw she was completely serious. "I'd be honored to consider it," I told her, and I meant every word. It was well past midnight when I finally returned to my apartment. I kicked off my heels, poured a glass of wine, and felt a rush of energy I hadn't known in years. My phone had been silent all day. No Merry Christmas texts from Michael or the grandkids. No calls asking if I could bring dessert or help clean up. They were having their peaceful Christmas without me. And for the first time I didn't miss them. I walked over to my computer and opened my investment account again. $8 million. Enough to live any kind of life I wanted. Enough to stop begging for scraps of affection from people who didn't value me. I thought of Diane buying her way into my grandchildren's hearts, of Lauren's dismissive remarks about my little apartment and thrift store finds, of Michael's assumption that I'd always be there, grateful for whatever crumbs of attention he tossed my way. They didn't know who I really was. They'd never cared to find out. Maybe it was time they did. The week after Christmas, I did something I'd never done in my 65 years. I walked into Harry Winston and bought myself a Patek Philippe watch. Not because I needed to tell time better, but because I wanted to know what it felt like to walk into a luxury store and buy something beautiful just because I could. The saleswoman's whole demeanor shifted when I handed her my Black American Express card. Suddenly, I wasn't just another older woman browsing. I was a valued client, worth champagne and private consultation rooms. "This would look exquisite on you," she said, fastening a diamond tennis bracelet around my wrist. "I bought that too." And that was only the beginning. By mid-January, I'd hired a personal shopper, a decorator, and a real estate agent. If my family wanted to act like I was insignificant, fine. But I was done living that way. The apartment I bought was everything my old one wasn't. 2 bedrooms, marble countertops, and a view that made people gasp when they walked in. It was in the same building as Susan and Robert, just 3 floors up from my old place. The same building Michael hadn't visited in over 5 years. "Are you sure about this?" Susan asked as she helped me pick out furniture for my new place. "It's quite a change." "Oh, sure." For the first time in decades, I was completely certain about something. And it wasn't just about the money. I'd hired a personal trainer who came to my home gym 3 times a week. A stylist who taught me how to dress for my body and carry myself like I belonged in the rooms I was now walking into. I even brought in a chef twice a week. Not because I couldn't cook, but because I was tired of always being the one doing the serving. Within 2 months, I was unrecognizable. Yes, the strength training had changed my posture and given me a new kind of confidence, but it went deeper. I moved through the world differently now, like someone who had every right to take up space. Victoria Bennett had been serious about the board position. The Bennett Foundation for Educational Excellence met twice a month in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the San Francisco Bay. I found myself seated at a mahogany table with people whose names appeared in Forbes, talking about million-dollar grants like they were just another line item on a grocery list. "And brings such a valuable perspective," Victoria told the group during my 3rd meeting. "She understands what it's like for working families to choose between paying the bills and investing in their kids' future." And they listened, really listened. Not the polite half-attention I'd grown used to from my own family, but genuine engagement. When I suggested funding after-school programs in working-class neighborhoods, the room lit up with discussion. By the end of the meeting, we'd committed $2 million to the initiative. $2 million. More than I'd ever dreamed of having access to, and I was helping decide how to spend it to change lives. My calendar filled quickly. Gallery openings, charity galas, private dinners in historic estates that had been in families for generations. I was photographed at a museum fundraiser standing next to a tech billionaire and his wife. The society page's caption read, "And Morrison, philanthropist and foundation board member, discusses literacy initiatives with fellow donors." Philanthropist. I'd become someone worthy of a title. And the strangest part? It felt natural. Not the money, that still amazed me every morning when I woke up in silk sheets and Egyptian cotton pajamas, but the respect. The way people sought out my opinions. The assumption that I belonged. This was who I'd always been, just buried under decades of making myself smaller. I started traveling. First, a long weekend in Sonoma Valley with Susan and Robert, staying at a resort where the cheapest room cost more than I used to spend on groceries in 3 months. Then a week in Paris with Victoria, at a hotel where the staff remembered your coffee order and the sheets had a higher thread count than my old apartment's rent. In Paris, I bought clothes that made me feel truly beautiful. In Sonoma, I learned about wine from a sommelier who treated my palate like it mattered. The photos began appearing online in March. Not ones I posted, but pictures my new friends shared. And at a charity auction, bidding on a painting. And at a wine tasting, laughing with the daughter of a real estate mogul. And at a private dinner, seated between a prominent judge and a best-selling author. In every photo I looked like someone who belonged. Someone with presence, style, and stories worth hearing. I didn't think about Michael seeing them. I was too busy living my life to wonder who might be watching from the sidelines. But he was watching. They all were. The first sign came in April, a text from Lauren. The first I'd heard from any of them since Christmas. Mom Morrison, hope you're doing well. The kids were asking about you. I read it twice, trying to decode the sudden warmth. Mom Morrison. She'd never called me that before. It had always been Anne at best or nothing at all. I didn't reply right away. I was getting ready for a benefit dinner where I was being honored for my work with the Education Foundation. The dress I'd chosen cost more than I used to spend on Christmas presents for the entire family, and it was worth every cent. I looked like someone who had never begged for a seat at anyone's table. 2 days later, another text from Lauren. Chloe's spring concert is next week. She'd love to see you there. Now that was interesting. Her last concert had been in December, right before Christmas, when I'd asked Michael if I could come, and he told me it was just for immediate family. But suddenly I was being invited. Over lunch at the Pacific Union Club, I showed the text to Victoria Bennett. She raised one eyebrow. Sounds like someone's been doing a little research. How long has it been since you heard from them? She asked. Christmas Eve, I said. When they uninvited me from dinner. Victoria's expression hardened. She'd heard that story before during one of our long talks about family loyalty and the sharp difference between the two. And now they want you back, she said. How convenient. It was convenient. Suspiciously so. That evening I was eating at home when my doorman called. Mrs. Morrison, there's a delivery for you. Flowers. The arrangement was extravagant. White roses and lilies, the sort of display that cost hundreds. The card read, thinking of you, Mom. Love, Michael, Lauren, Chloe, and Ryan. I stared at it for a long time. 6 months of silence and now, flowers. Invitations. Mom Morrison instead of just Anne. Something had changed. Something had made them suddenly remember I existed. I walked over to my laptop and typed my own name into Google, for the first time in my life. The results made me pause. There I was in dozens of photos from the past 4 months. Society pages, charity websites, foundation newsletters. And Morrison at this event. And Morrison at that gala. And Morrison, donor and board member. Honored guest. And Morrison, who clearly had money. I leaned back in my chair and started laughing. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. They hadn't missed me. They hadn't realized they'd made a mistake pushing me away. They'd realized they'd made a mistake excluding my bank account. The first call came at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday in late April. I was in my home gym halfway through a session with Marcus, my trainer, when my phone lit up. Michael. I let it go to voicemail. Mrs. Morrison, want to take a break? Marcus asked, noticing my glance at the screen. No, I said. Whoever it is can wait. But the calls kept coming. By the time I finished my workout, showered, and sat down for breakfast, I had 17 missed calls. All from Michael. 17 calls in 2 hours. I poured my coffee and listened to the first voicemail while looking out over the city. The same city I'd always lived in, but now from a very different view. It's Michael. I really need to talk to you. Call me back as soon as you get this. It's important. His voice had an edge I hadn't heard since he was a teenager asking to borrow the car. Nervous, almost pleading. The second voicemail. Mom, I know we haven't talked in a while, but I really need to reach you. Please call me back. By the fifth message, the desperation was undeniable. Mom, I saw the photos from the charity events. We need to talk. Please just call me back. So that was it. He'd connected the dots. The society photos, the galas, the foundation meetings. His mother, the one he'd tossed aside so casually 6 months ago, was now showing up in a world of influence and wealth, wearing clothes that cost more than his mortgage. I set the phone aside and opened my laptop. New photos had gone up just yesterday from the Literacy Foundation's spring benefit. I'd been at the head table, seated next to the mayor's wife and a prominent tech entrepreneur. The photographer had caught me mid-laugh at something Victoria said, looking perfectly at home. The caption read, Anne Morrison, major foundation donor and board member, enjoys the evening's festivities. Major donor, that was new but accurate. I'd written a $50,000 check that night. Barely a dent in my investment account, but enough to fund 3 new after-school programs. The phone rang again. Hello, Michael. Mom. His voice carried pure relief, like he'd been holding his breath. Thank God. I've been trying to reach you all morning. I was busy, I said evenly. What do you need? He hesitated. He wasn't used to me being direct. I'd always been the one to accommodate, to drop everything when he called. We need to talk. Can I come over? I'm not at the old apartment anymore. Silence. What do you mean? I moved. I live in the penthouse now. Same building, different life. Another pause, longer this time. The penthouse? Those apartments cost. I know what they cost. I could almost hear him processing it. His mother, who once clipped coupons and shopped clearance racks, now living in a penthouse. Can I come up? He asked. I glanced at my calendar. Lunch with Susan at 1, a foundation planning meeting at 3, dinner with potential donors at 7. My days were full now, full of purpose and full of people who valued my time. I have 30 minutes at 11, I told him. When Michael arrived, I almost didn't recognize him. He'd always been handsome with his father's dark hair and strong features, but now he looked worn, older than his 38 years. His expensive suit, probably chosen by Lauren, was rumpled. There were shadows under his eyes. He stood in my foyer, his gaze moving over the marble floors, the crystal chandelier, the art I'd selected with my decorator. His mouth hung slightly open, like he couldn't quite process what he was seeing. This is incredible, he finally said. How did you? When did you? Would you like coffee? My housekeeper made a fresh pot this morning. You have a housekeeper. I led him into the living room, where floor-to-ceiling windows framed a view real estate agents would call breathtaking. He sank into one of my leather chairs, still looking around like he'd stepped into someone else's life. In a way he had. Mom, I don't understand. Last Christmas you were in that tiny apartment and now... He gestured helplessly at the space around him. Now I'm living the life I can afford. But, where did the money come from? I sat across from him, perfectly composed in my tailored jacket and silk blouse. The clothes of a woman who belonged in boardrooms and at charity galas. It was always there, Michael. You just never asked. His face went pale. What do you mean always there? I inherited it. 3 years ago. From your great-aunt Margaret. Aunt Margaret left you money? $8 million. The number hit him like a punch. He actually leaned back, a hand going to his chest as though he needed to catch his breath. 8 million? Mom, why didn't you tell me? I took a slow sip of coffee, letting the question hang. Tell you what, exactly? That I had money you could borrow? That I could solve all your problems with my checkbook? No, that's not, I mean... He stumbled over the words, clearly unsure how to navigate this new version of me. The power dynamic had shifted and he didn't know the rules anymore. You mean like Diane does for you and Lauren? His face flushed. That's different. How is it different? She wants to help. She offers. And I didn't want to help? I didn't mean it that way. But he had, and we both knew it. Diane's money came with gratitude. Mine, in his mind, came with conditions. Diane was worth impressing. I was someone to manage. The phone on my side table chimed. Susan confirming our lunch plans. In 2 hours I'd be sitting in one of the city's most exclusive dining rooms, talking art acquisitions and vacation plans with women whose opinions carried weight. I need to wrap this up, I said, glancing at my watch. I have appointments. Mom, wait. I came here because Lauren and I are having problems. And there was the real reason behind the desperate phone calls. Not guilt. Not affection. Not remorse. Problems. Problems that needed solutions, and solutions that needed money. I'm sorry to hear that, I said honestly. But I didn't offer to fix it. He looked at me like I'd started speaking another language. The divorce lawyer wants a $50,000 retainer. My business is struggling. The kids' school fees are due next month. I nodded sympathetically, saying nothing. Mom, I know I haven't been the best son lately. I know Christmas was... I know we made mistakes. But I'm asking for your help. I'm family. Family, I repeated. You're also the man who told me not to come to Christmas because you wanted peace. The man who never once checked on me in 6 months. The man who only called when you found out I had something you needed. His face crumpled, and for a moment I saw the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mom. I was wrong. We were wrong. Lauren was... She influenced me and I let her. And I'm sorry. Lauren influenced you to treat your mother like an inconvenience. She said you were trying to control us. To make us feel guilty. For what? For not needing you anymore. The honesty was brutal. Not needing me anymore. As if my worth had ever been tied only to what I could give. And once that was no longer required, I was disposable. And now you need me again. He nodded, misery written across his face. I know how it looks. I don't deserve your help, but I'm desperate. I don't know what else to do. I stood, smoothing my skirt. I'll think about it. You'll think about it? I'll consider whether helping you is something I want to do. Whether it's good for me. Whether it aligns with my values. Whether it's how I want to spend my money. He stared at me like I was a stranger, which, in a way, I was. I'll be in touch, I said, walking him to the door. After he left, I stood at the window looking down at the street below. Somewhere down on the street, Michael was probably sitting in his car, trying to process what had just happened. Trying to understand how the mother who had always said, "Of course, honey, whatever you need," had just told him, "I'll think about it." The truth was, I'd already made up my mind. I just wasn't ready to tell him what that decision was. I let him wait 2 full weeks before I called back. 2 weeks during which my phone rang constantly, not only from him but from Lauren as well. Even Chloe called once, her 17-year-old voice shaky with tears about how daddy was so stressed and mommy was crying all the time. They were pulling out every emotional card they'd never bothered to play when what they wanted was simply my company. When I finally invited Michael over, I timed it deliberately. A Saturday afternoon, right after I'd returned from a weekend in Carmel by the Sea with Victoria and her husband. I was still wearing the linen dress I'd bought for their yacht party, my hair smelling faintly of salt air, my skin warm from 2 days of being treated like I mattered. Michael arrived looking worse than before. The suit was gone, replaced by jeans and a wrinkled shirt. His hair needed cutting. There was desperation in his eyes that made him look older and younger at the same time. "Thank you for seeing me," he said as I led him into the living room. "I know you're busy." I was busy, busier than I'd ever been in my life and loving every moment. But I didn't tell him that. "Sit down, Michael. We need to talk." He perched on the edge of the sofa as if afraid to get comfortable. I sat in the same leather chair I'd occupied 2 weeks earlier when he first learned the truth about my finances. "Before we talk about what you need," I began, "I want you to understand something I've learned these past few months." He nodded quickly, like a student hoping to pass a test he hadn't studied for. "I spent 40 years making myself smaller so other people could feel bigger. I worked jobs I hated so you could have opportunities. I stayed in apartments I'd outgrown so you could have college funds. I wore clothes that made me invisible so you could shine. Mom, I never asked you to." "No, you didn't ask. You just expected. And I gave because that's what I thought love was. Sacrifice without recognition, service without appreciation." His face had gone pale, but he didn't interrupt again. "Do you know what I've discovered since Christmas? I've discovered that when people see you as valuable, they treat you as valuable. When they know your time costs something, they don't waste it. When they understand your attention is a gift, they're grateful to receive it. For the first time in my adult life, I'm surrounded by people who want my opinions, who value my experience, who include me because they enjoy my company. Not because they have to, and not because I'm paying for the privilege. Because they choose to." Michael's hands were clenched in his lap. "I chose you too, Mom. You're my mother." "No, Michael. You inherited me. There's a difference." The words hung in the air, heavy. I saw the moment he realized I wasn't wrong. "I want to help you," I continued. "But not the way I used to. Not by fixing your problems and then pretending it never happened. Not by enabling you to keep making the same mistakes because you know I'll always clean up the mess." "What do you mean?" I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder I'd prepared. Inside were bank statements, loan records, years of careful documentation. "This is what I mean. For 20 years you've borrowed money from me. Usually small amounts, 50 here, 200 there. Sometimes bigger, like the 5,000 for Chloe's school fees. Do you know how much it adds up to?" He shook his head. $47,000. His mouth opened but nothing came out. I kept track of every loan, every request, every promise to pay me back. I thought someday you'd want to know. Someday you'd ask. Maybe even try to make it right. But you never did because in your mind it wasn't borrowing. It was just taking from someone who didn't matter enough to say no. Mom, I didn't think. I didn't realize. You didn't think I was keeping track, or you didn't think it mattered? Silence. Then quietly, I didn't think you minded. Of course I minded. But I'd trained you so well to expect my sacrifice, you stopped seeing it as sacrifice. You saw it as my function. I gathered the papers back into the folder. Each page was a reminder of how little my financial security had ever mattered to the people I loved most. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to help you with your divorce lawyer. I'll pay the $50,000 you need. Relief rushed across his face. Mom, thank you. I promise I'll pay you back this time. I swear. No, you won't pay me back, I said. Because this isn't a loan. He frowned. What do you mean? This, I told him evenly, is severance pay. I'm buying myself out of the obligation to fix your problems. $50,000 and then we're even. No more emergency calls. No more crisis management. No more assuming my money is your safety net. I don't understand. I'm retiring from being your financial backup plan, I said. After this payment you handle your own problems, like the grown man you are. The relief on his face dissolved into panic. But what if something happens? What if the kids need something? Or Lauren? Lauren has her mother for that. Diane's been your family's ATM for years. I'm sure she'll continue. That's different, he said quickly. Diane doesn't give us money out of guilt or obligation. Exactly. She gives because she wants to, because you've made her feel valued, because you've never taken her generosity for granted. The comparison hung in the air between us like an accusation. He'd treated Diane's money as a gift and mine as an entitlement. But you're my mother. Yes. And you're 38. Old enough to know that being someone's child doesn't mean unlimited access to their resources. I could see him struggling to process it. The mother who'd always said yes was now saying no. The woman who'd never drawn boundaries was suddenly defining them in black and white. There's something else, I said. About Christmas. His face went carefully blank. What about Christmas? You told me not to come because you wanted a peaceful Christmas with family. But I was family too, Michael. I was family, until it was inconvenient for you. We made a mistake. I know that now. You made a choice, I corrected. You chose Lauren's comfort over my feelings. You chose your kids' preferences over your mother's inclusion. You chose peace over loyalty. I'm sorry. I know you are. But sorry doesn't undo the 6 months I spent wondering what I'd done wrong. Sorry doesn't erase the message you sent, that I wasn't welcome in my own family. Tears began to form in his eyes. Real ones this time, not the manipulative kind he'd used as a boy when he wanted something. What can I do to make this right? He asked. You can accept that this is how things are now. I'm not the same person I was at Christmas. I don't beg for inclusion or settle for scraps of affection. I have choices and I'm choosing to live differently. Does that mean you don't want me in your life? I looked at him, the man I'd raised, sacrificed for, loved without limits for nearly 40 years. In that moment he looked strangely young, uncertain about where he stood with me. I want you in my life if you want to be in mine. Really in it, not just when you need something. Call because you want to know how I'm doing, not because you hope I can fix a problem. Invite me because you enjoy my company, not because you feel obligated. I do enjoy your company. Do you? When's the last time you called just to talk? When's the last time you asked about my interests, my friends, my plans for the future? He said nothing. I'm not angry anymore, Michael, I told him. I'm just done being taken for granted. Done being treated like I'm lucky to be in your life instead of the other way around. I stood, smoothing my dress. I'll have my lawyer transfer the $50,000 to your account this week. After that, we start fresh. You decide what kind of relationship you want with me, and I'll decide if it's the kind I want too. He rose as well, looking lost. Can I hug you? I let him. But it didn't feel the same as it used to. Less desperation on my part. More gratitude on his. I love you, Mom, Michael said. I love you too, I told him. But love isn't enough anymore. I need respect too. After he left, I sat in my beautiful apartment looking out over my beautiful view. And for the first time since Christmas I felt completely at peace. I was finally free. 6 months later I was in my kitchen making coffee when my phone rang. It was Chloe calling from college. Grandma Ann, I hope I'm not bothering you. You're never bothering me, sweetheart. How are you? I'm good. Really good, actually. I wanted to thank you. That was new. In all the years I'd been Chloe's grandmother, she'd never called just to thank me. Not for birthday gifts or the school clothes I'd bought when money was tight, or the countless times I'd babysat so her parents could have date nights. Thank me for what? For the college fund. Dad told me you set one up for Ryan and me. Nobody's ever done anything like that for me before. I smiled, remembering the day I'd met with my financial advisor to set up the education trusts. Funds they could use for tuition, books, and living expenses. Money Michael couldn't touch. Money with no strings and no guilt. You're welcome, honey. I want you to have opportunities. It's not just the money, she said. It's that you thought about my future. Like, really thought about it. Mom's always focused on what's happening right now and Dad's always stressed about work. But you actually planned for something that hasn't even happened yet. Her words were so mature, so thoughtful, they caught me off guard. When had Chloe grown into this insightful young woman? Can I ask you something, Grandma? Of course. Are you happier now? The question surprised me. What do you mean? Dad says you're different since you moved to the penthouse. He says you're more independent. And when I saw those pictures from your charity events, you looked happy. Like genuinely happy. I don't remember seeing you look like that before. I thought about how to answer. Chloe was 19 now, old enough for honesty. I am happier. I'm living the life I want instead of the life other people expected me to live. Is that why you don't come to family dinners anymore? There was the question I'd been waiting for someone to ask. I don't come because I'm not invited the right way anymore. What do you mean? I poured my coffee and sat down, feeling the weight of the conversation. For years I was invited to family events as the help. Come early to cook, stay late to clean, bring something homemade because your other grandmother was bringing something expensive. I was included but not really welcome. Chloe was quiet. I could picture her thinking it through. But that changed. I changed. I decided I'd rather spend holidays with people who actually want me there, than with people who tolerate me. Do you think we tolerated you? The vulnerability in her voice broke my heart a little. Not you, sweetheart. You were a child. You didn't have a choice in how the adults treated each other. But now I do have a choice. I'm calling because I want to see you, she said softly. Not because Mom told me to. Not because it's a holiday. Because I miss you. That night, Chloe came to my apartment for dinner. Not a big family gathering with all its baggage, just the two of us getting to know each other as adults. She told me about her classes, her friends, her plans after graduation. I told her about the foundation, my travels, the art classes I'd started taking. We talked for hours. The kind of conversation I'd always wished we could have, but never managed when everything had to go through her parents' filter. Grandma, can I say something that might sound weird? Sure. I think you're cooler now than you've ever been. I laughed. Cooler. Yeah. You have this confidence, like you know who you are and you're not apologizing for it. When I was little, you were always trying to make everyone else happy. Now you're trying to make yourself happy. Is that bad? Are you kidding? It's amazing. I want to be like that when I'm your age. When Chloe left, she hugged me tighter than she had since she was a little girl. Can we do this again? Just us. Anytime you want. 2 weeks later, Ryan called. My younger grandson, 16 now, and apparently capable of more insight than I'd given him credit for. Grandma, Dad says you might not come to Christmas again this year. That's right. Can I ask why? I explained it the same way I had to Chloe. About being wanted versus being tolerated, about choosing to spend my time with people who valued it. What if I wanted you there? Like really wanted you there, not just because Mom says family should be together. Then we'll figure out a way to celebrate together. Maybe not on Christmas Day, but our own celebration. Would you teach me to cook? That stuffing you used to make. Of course. Ryan started coming over every other Saturday. We'd cook together and I'd tell him stories about his father as a boy, about the grandfather he never met, about family history no one else seemed interested in keeping alive. He was a good kid, just caught in the middle of adult problems he didn't create. The real surprise came in November. Michael called, and for once it wasn't because he needed something. Mom, I wanted to talk to you about Christmas. I braced myself for another plea, another attempt to guilt me into their version of family harmony. I know you're not coming to our house and I understand why, but I was wondering, would you be okay if I came to see you? just me on Christmas morning before all the chaos starts. The request was so unexpected I didn't answer right away. I'm not asking for anything, he added. I just want to spend time with my mother if you'll have me. What about Lauren? I asked. Lauren and I are working on our relationship. Part of that means maintaining the relationships that matter to me, even if they don't fit into her plan for how things should be. It was the most mature thing I'd ever heard him say. I'd like that, I told him. On Christmas morning, Michael arrived at 10 with a thermos of coffee and a bag of pastries from my favorite bakery, the one I'd mentioned loving months ago in passing. He'd remembered. We sat in my living room watching snow fall over the city and we talked. Really talked. He asked about my foundation work, my travels, the art classes Chloe had mentioned. I asked about his business, his marriage, his hopes for the new year. I owe you an apology, he said as he was getting ready to leave. You've already apologized. Not for last Christmas. Well, yes, for that too. But also for all the years before. For treating your generosity like it was my right. For taking your love for granted. For never seeing you as a person with your own dreams and needs. What changed? I asked. Watching you live differently. Seeing how happy you are when you're not trying to take care of everyone else. I realized I'd never once wondered what would make you happy. And now I can see it. You're happier than I've ever seen you. And I'm proud of you for choosing yourself. After he left, I sat in my apartment, the one I'd chosen, surrounded by the life I'd built for myself, and felt something I'd never felt before, complete contentment. All day my phone buzzed with messages. Chloe sent photos from her volunteer shift at a homeless shelter. Ryan showed off the dinner he'd cooked using one of my recipes. Susan and Robert invited me for champagne later that night. People who included me because they wanted me there, not because they felt they had to. I was finally, completely, beautifully, free. And if my story stayed with you, tap that like button and subscribe. It lets me know you're here and it helps this story reach the people who might need it most.